So how do you think moving forward, apart from the fact that developers need to think about their positioning, the product angle, really having a differentiated product because they have a little bit more competition. Yeah, what do you think will be the mindset that a lot of buyers probably will be thinking on the ground? Is that would there be like price drop, or would there be discounts? Like, what do you think in terms of this kind of thought process?
Okay, actually pricing is obviously based on many different variables, right? I think Singapore, we have been very fortunate with the property market since COVID, right? Like, I don't think there's any other countries in the world where property market continues to rise despite all the challenges. Even Hong Kong, right, which is known for its crazy prices, the market is down 10, 15.
Yeah, even South Korea also. Like, this is the first time after I think 13 months that they see like a U-turn. Yeah, so I think like a lot of global cities are affected. Yeah.
So globally, actually, I mean, is natural, right? Because interest rates very high now. I shouldn't say very high, it's back to what it was before the low interest rate environment, right? So to curb inflation, right? So obviously interest rate makes it very expensive, not just for consumers to buy property, but also from developers. So both the supply side is affected because developers now they think, hey, do I want to buy this site because my interest cost, my holding cost is very high, right? So the fewer the developers buying and launching means supply is taken out of the market, right? So you have an environment where there is low supply, right? But at the same time, you have an environment where demand may also come down. So when you have supply reducing, demand coming down, maybe net pricing will not fall, but I think it's unlikely that it will continue in the same trajectory in the last few years where prices have gone up, 8% per year or something like that.
Double digit, it has been always, it have been
10% or something like that. So I don't think that will happen anymore in the next 2 to 3 years, as long as interest rates continue to stay high. Inflation continues to stay. I think that is unlikely to happen because of the reasons that I mentioned. So what will be interesting is to look at actually is the second half of this year. Not so much the launches, but the land sites that are being put up for tender.
Like, how many bids are there?
How many bids and at what price, right? Because if it's lower than the
previous
prices, then that kind of tells you the trend where the market is heading, right? But if it's higher, then they have to relaunch at a higher price because not just land costs have gone up, but construction costs and all these things, right, have gone up quite a bit. So I think that will be the interesting watch for the coming 6 half to really see what will the prices be like next year. But whether it's going to continue the 8-10%, I think is unlikely for a while, at least until interest rates come down.
I mean, the last 3 years, landed and then in terms of landed and condo, averagely about 23 to probably about 26% increment. But I think based on the first quarter now, is stabilized.
In fact, some of the segments fell, right? I think,
RCR fell.
RCR fell, right?
So I think it should be like single digit kind of movement. In fact, I think probably one contributing factor with the difference between Singapore and the rest of the world now. In fact, I think the latest UBS Wealth report was that Singapore was like the only city that defied the drop in global wealth. It's like our global wealth technically increased, the amount of millionaires increased in Singapore and stuff. So I think the safe haven effect is taking place. A lot of people want to really come to Singapore to park their funds here. And do you ever think that our cooling measures can be retracted? I mean, we have about 16 rounds. I just feel that we're stuck. And it's like the moment if our government were to release anything, the floodgate will open. So we just got a feeling that it's stuck. And they can only add, they cannot retract. What do you think?
I think cooling measures by its definition and name is meant to be temporary, right? To just cool the market for a short term of period before it's being removed. That is the definition of cooling measures. But I don't recall any cooling measure. Well, the only one that I can think of, SSD 4 to 3 years. That was the only one, right? And I think that sort of moved the market a bit. So I think Singapore, generally, the real estate sector, we're quite blessed in the sense that I don't think the government will let the market fail, correct? But at the same time, I don't think a rapid increase in prices is also what the authority wants, because then you make it a lot harder for people to own property, home ownership, which becomes another issue, right? So it's a very controlled environment, right? In fact, I think we did a study maybe a month or two ago where we looked at the volatility of property prices in Singapore compared to other big markets,
Right.
other big cities like New York, Hong Kong, Sydney. And Singapore has the lowest volatility, right? Because it's so well managed, right? So so your question is whether cooling measures some
Will
of
be
it may
retracted,
be
right.
retracted. I think potentially yes, if property prices fall significantly, right? Because they have this lever where they can
Recalibrate,
yeah. Because they also don't want property prices to fall, right?
Yeah.
Like homeowners will be upset, right? So
Yeah.
naturally there is this in place in case anything happens lah. But obviously the caveat here is that everything else is status quo, right? But if you have a war or you have whatever, then all these equations are thrown out of the room lah.
Yeah.
Then the equilibrium is off. But generally, I think we are blessed in the sense that there are these levers in place to moderate property prices, but at the same time, it can also prevent property prices from falling too drastically, because I don't think that's what the Singapore government wants. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay, second last question. What do you think will be the hidden ripple effects of the latest standard plus and prime BTO model?
Wow, it's a good. I think I should ask you this question. Because
I can share also. Yeah. You go ahead.
So I mean, I think generally is good. It'll take time to educate the consumers, because personally for me, when it came out, so now you have like 3 different products to choose from, right? So if I go for my HDB appointment, like how do I decide? Because it can be very tricky, right?
Yeah.
To decide based on so many different permutations. Like, if I go for plus, then it's 10 years MOP. If I go for standard, it's 5 years. Like, is this better? So there be a lot of questions. But I think generally it's good. It's product segmentation, right? Like when you take marketing classes, the first thing you do learn is about product segmentation, right? Because different groups have different needs. But I think you're right. So before we videoed this or taped this, you mentioned that it may encourage people to buy some of the resale markets now.
Yeah.
Before then, you cannot buy the new ones 10 years later, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it will have an effect of creating a bit of hype today in the resale space. So potentially that is the repercussion. But I'm sure that is not the intention. I think the intention is basically making sure that the future generations can afford something that they want to afford.
Yeah.
I mean that they want to, because for example they put in the income ceiling, the 14,000 income ceiling.
Correct.
For the
Plus and prime.
Which is basically to prevent speculative, right? They don't want you to own a HDB 5 years later, 10 years later, flip it. You know, that is not the intention of HDB. Right? HDB is to ensure that it's sufficient housing for all. Yeah. What are your views?
Well, I did a calculation. I think it's like an extremely smart move. So it's like they give you 3 packages, right? So it's very clear cut now. If you are a young couple, you'll be thinking you have 4 products to choose. One is you go for prime, or the best location, plus near MRT. If not, you go for standard, which is definitely feeder bus. So if you're a couple that wants to live beside an MRT station, you technically only have 2 choices. Either I go for the plus or I go for resale now. If I go for the plus, I can only exit in 14 years time. So let's say a couple is 30 years old. By the time they can exit, they wait 4 years to collect keys, 10 years to fulfill MOP. I'll be 44 years old. By the time if I want to move to a private property, I'll be 45. Yeah. Then there are 2 restrictions. Number 1, if I want to keep my HDB and bite the bullet to buy a private, I cannot rent out the HDB because they don't allow you to rent out.
You can't rent out the whole unit anymore.
I can't rent out the rooms, right? And to rent out the rooms, the rule of HDB is you have to stay inside. Then the second rule is I can only sell to the next resale buyer that has an income ceiling of 14,000. So
which means your price will be
correct. So we did a backward calculation. 14,000 MSR limit. Your loan for HDB is about 800 over 1,000. Your loan for bank is about 700 over 1,000, which caps the total purchase ability to about 935 to 1 mil. So it's a very smart move to cap the property price at about $1 million. And the forward calculation that we did was that if I less off my outstanding loan, HDB accrued interest over 10 years, return subsidy, and they sort of hinted that the subsidy, I don't know, I look at the news article, they say they might try to bring down to, if it's supposed to be 650, they will launch at 550. So let's say I return a subsidy of 100,000. Actually, the cash proceed average out to be 100 odd to 130,000, which is the same as standard. Yeah.
Which is not much lah.
Not much lah. So I think young couples will start to think, if I want to stay near MRT, why don't I just go for a resale
HDB
near
today
MRT? Yeah. So I don't know, but it feels like the underlying ripple is that people might start to deviate a little bit. Yeah, unless they are very sure they will not move out. Yeah, they are going to stay there for long and things like that. Yeah, but I mean, we see how it goes. I mean, I think this will all happen 14 years later in the year 2037, right? So by the time it's already, I don't know what is the median household income by then. I also don't know what is the inflation rate by then, and we also don't know what will prices be like.
It's
so long.
Wages and everything will be different by then. But do you think it will have a ripple effect in the sense that maybe I stretch my budget a bit, I go and buy resale condo now?
Possible.
Right?
Possible.
Okay.
Yeah.